Hey everyone, thank you again so much for joining me. Continuing my breakdown of Love is Blind Season 2. Um, and so this time I'm talking about Shayne and Natalie's relationship. And so this is another love triangle. I think this season of Love is Blind was pretty juicy because there were some love triangles, there was some um, drama, of course, but there are a lot of interesting interactions in these shows. But for this relationship with Shayne and Natalie, I think one of the things that made it really interesting and I guess a really great conversation starter is that they were, from what I could see, pretty good in terms of um, twin flame dynamics because Natalie was I would consider maybe the strong silent type. She um, had a lot to say, but she really didn't seem to say a lot. On the other hand, Shayne did say a lot, and I think the thing that probably attracted these two to each other was that Shayne probably wants to be a little more of the strong silent type and wants to be more confident, or at least seem more confident. Um, and he's not afraid to open his mouth and ask for what he wants in terms of compliments. And I think that Natalie probably would like a lot of the same thing. And there could also be cultural dynamics coming into play here. But I think if we think about traditional roles, maybe Shayne might be more of the traditional feminine energy, and Natalie might be more of the traditional masculine energy. And so, just it's important to say because I don't want anyone thinking that I'm insulting anyone. Um, we both have masculine and feminine energies, the male and female, or the masculine and feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine. We we both have masculine and feminine energy. So I think that sometimes when we're out of balance, one of those two takes over our energy instead of the two being balanced. So I think, like I'm saying with Shayne, I think he was more in his divine feminine energy, and I think Natalie was more in her divine masculine energy, and I think both of them would love to be able to come to the middle, and I think it's one of the things that would attract them to each other. I think Shayne was also looking for, if we're talking about the desire for spiritual development, in the last video I talked about Jarrett and Ayana. I think what maybe Jarrett would have wanted would be for Ayana to reject him, because I think that might be one of the biggest fears that he faces, which is someone's going to reject him and then it's going to devastate him. He's going to crumble and not recover. But I think to see him go through it with Mallory and actually, I mean, he bounced right back. Of course, he went after Ayana and Ayana said yes. But I think what would have benefited him the most would have been if she had said no. And I think in this dynamic, what benefited Shayne the most was Natalie saying, let's hold off. And because for him, even though he might seek out this, approval or constant, compliments and things like that, I think if we're talking about spiritual growth, what that person that's seeking that really is looking for is someone to be honest and tell them the truth. And I think that Natalie was actually doing a pretty decent job of not giving Shayne every single compliment that he wanted. And I think that would have been the thing that drew him the most to her, is seeking that approval. And I think it's important for everyone to continue doing the work that they need to do so that they're not feeling like they need constant approval. They need constant compliments. They need someone to tell them they're pretty or they're beautiful or they're whatever all the time. They can understand that love comes from within. If you don't love yourself first, it will be really difficult to find someone outside of you, if not impossible, that can truly love you. And I think for Shayne, as you know, as I was talking about, there's this love triangle. So he also is interested in Shayna, and I think Shayna would have been interested in someone who is similar to Shayne, because Shayne was also giving Shayna a lot of compliments or asking her, "What are you wearing?" And I think maybe inside of her, there's this part of her that, like Shayne, might not feel that he's all that beautiful, just like her. She might not feel she's all that beautiful, and she puts a lot of work into her outward appearance, just like it seems like Shayne does. However, on the inside, I think is where the work might be lacking. I didn't get to know Shayne a whole lot, but looking at what we saw of Shayne, they did not portray him in the greatest light, or and some of it is his own personality. So it is what it is. But to see that, it's so important. That's what I was talking about on the other video. It's so important for us to continue to do this work so that we don't look like that. However, if that's truly who we are, I think then it starts there, and we can actually work and figure out how to turn things around. But if we're constantly showing up that way and then no one gives us feedback, and people just constantly say, "Oh, you're pretty, you're beautiful," and this and that, then it's really tough, because a lot of people aren't going to just randomly get started doing the inner work. It takes for a lot of people, probably most people, to run into that immovable wall, right? The one that got away, or the person who's telling them the truth about what they look like, who they are, which is, you need to do some work. And I think it pushes the person then to start looking inside. And I think great work begins when that happens to a lot of people. So I think with Shayne and Natalie, I think the way for them to stay on the right track, I would say, is to continue giving each other what you need, not necessarily what the person is saying that they want, which, like I said, in this case, for Shayne, it's a bunch of compliments. And I think what he was seeking out, like I said, was someone like Natalie, who's going to say, "Yeah, I'm not going to give you a compliment every 5 minutes. What do you want? I got to, take care of me too, and, business." But also, I think it's good for Natalie to step up and say, "Hey, this is what I want. This is, I also want compliments. I also want people to say that I'm beautiful. I also want, maybe if she's being sarcastic, instead of that, just speaking on, how she feels about certain situations. If she's not happy, to really speak the truth, because it's one thing to be sarcastic and to be the strong, silent type, to give a look of disapproval. It's another thing to really speak on your real feelings on a topic, and to not just put up a facade and and say, "Nah, I don't know about that." Instead, well, break it down. How do you feel about it? A person might start sweating when they get this question, because then they're really going to have to be vulnerable and open up, if they're going to be honest and say how they truly feel. So this is my breakdown of Shayne and Natalie. Thank you again for joining me. More videos to come. Hope you enjoyed this. Again, I look forward to hearing your stories about your twin flames and your mirrors. But I think it's so important, again, to do the work. Okay. See you next time.